Have you ever just stared at a problem, completely stuck, and had no idea where to even start? Yeah, we've all been there. Well, today, we're going to unravel the hidden connections behind pretty much every problem, and I'll show you a super simple visual tool that can help you find the real root cause of almost anything. Let's dive in.
I mean, it's the biggest question, right? Why does anything happen? From a huge project failing at work to something as simple as your favorite coffee shop suddenly running out of oat milk. The thing is, behind every single outcome, there's a cause. But it's almost never just one thing. It's usually this complex, tangled web of causes.
So how in the world do you start to untangle a web like that? Well, it all starts with understanding one fundamental principle that connects absolutely everything: causality.
Okay, so what is it? At its core, causality is just the relationship between a cause and an effect. One thing happens, and that contributes to another thing happening. Think of it like a chain reaction, right? The first domino falls, and that directly leads to the next one toppling over, and so on. But here's the catch, and this is so important. A single cause, like one little gear turning, often isn't enough all by itself to create the final effect. You usually need a bunch of different factors, a whole lot of gears, all working together. And that complexity, that's exactly why just guessing isn't good enough to solve real, tricky problems.
So, if you can't just guess, how do you map out all those connected causes without totally getting lost in the weeds? You've got to make them visible.
And the best way to do that is with a map, a visual guide that lays out all the potential roads that could have led to your problem. And this brings us to our hero tool for the day, the Ishikawa diagram. Now, you probably know it by its much cooler name, the fishbone diagram. And the name makes perfect sense because it literally looks like the skeleton of a fish. It's a brilliant, brilliant tool designed for one specific job: to help you and your team brainstorm and visually organize every single possible cause behind a problem.
And you know what the best part is? It's actually surprisingly easy to build one. Seriously, let's just walk through the steps right now. Okay, so it all starts with your problem. That becomes the head of the fish, way over on the right. From there, you draw a long horizontal line shooting out to the left. That's the spine. Then, branching off that spine, you draw these diagonal lines for the main categories of causes. Those are the bones. Then the fun part begins, brainstorming, where you add all your specific ideas to each bone. And finally, you just step back and analyze the whole diagram.
Now that might sound a little abstract, so let's make it super concrete. We're going to build one right now using a real-world manufacturing example.
So I want you to imagine you're a manager at a smartphone factory. Your big problem right now is a crazy high number of phones coming off the assembly line with screen defects. This problem, high rate of screen defects, is our problem statement. That's the head of our fish.
Now, in manufacturing, there's a really common framework for the categories, our bones. It's called the 6 M's. This gives us a great starting point. We've got man, which is all about people; machine for the equipment; material for raw components; method for the actual processes; measurement for inspection and data; and finally, environment for the physical workspace.
Let's start brainstorming with the man or people category. What could be causing defects here? Well, maybe the assembly staff just doesn't have enough training. Or what if there's really high employee turnover? That would mean you're always dealing with new, inexperienced workers on the line.
Next up, what about the machine category? Could the equipment itself be the villain here? Maybe that old screen pressing machine is just outdated and applies inconsistent pressure. Or perhaps the testing tools need to be recalibrated constantly, which means you can't even trust the data you're getting.
Now, this is where it starts to get really interesting, because we can look upstream, beyond our own factory. Under material, could the problem be with our suppliers? What if the glass panels are arriving with tiny micro cracks we can't see? Or maybe the adhesive we're using has inconsistent quality from one batch to the next.
What about the process itself? This is our method category. Is it possible the cleaning process right before lamination isn't working well and it's leaving behind tiny particles? Or what if the procedure itself calls for the wrong amount of pressure during assembly, which ends up stressing the glass?
And the environment category, this shows how even really subtle things can have a huge impact. Are there microscopic dust particles floating around the assembly room that are getting trapped under the screen? Could a simple change in the room temperature be affecting how well the adhesive cures? I mean, these are all totally valid potential causes that are so easy to overlook.
So, once your diagram is all filled out, you have this amazing visual map of every potential root cause you can think of. Now the real analysis starts, helping you figure out what to investigate first. But as you do that, there's one critical mistake you have to avoid.
And that's confusing the symptom with the cause. See, screens are cracking is the symptom. It's what is happening. The root cause is why it's happening. The diagram forces you to dig deeper, to push past the obvious what and find the real why, like the incorrect pressure being applied by the machine.
I absolutely love this quote. It's perfect. It frames the diagram as your tool to literally fish out the real causes from this whole sea of distracting symptoms. It's just a simple, powerful way to remember what it's for.
So, here's the bottom line. The fishbone diagram gives you a systematic way to go from one single frustrating effect to a clear, organized world of potential causes. It basically turns a chaotic problem into a puzzle you can actually solve.
And look, this is an incredibly versatile tool. You can use it for manufacturing defects, sure, but also for a failing marketing campaign, or even for something in your own personal life, like why you can't seem to improve your productivity. The principles are exactly the same. So the only real question left is, what problem are you going to tackle first?